We can take one.
And I will be stepping down during these two processes.
So that brings us to the Marketplace Redevelopment Project study session. Maru, can we have the staff report, please?
Good evening, Chair Mosk, Planning Commissioners. This is a study session on the marketplace. For the past year, this commission has seen about 5 study sessions on different portions of the marketplace. And at the last one, which was a second study session for the park FDP in October, the commission expressed concern about reviewing proposals in different parcels on a piecemeal basis and wished to review the project in its entirety in order to ensure consistency with the approved PTP. So that's why we are here today. So the applicant is modifying the 2008 PUD PDP in 3 ways. There's a changes in the mix of uses. It reduces the time for total build out from 25 years to about 12 years, and it changes the sequence of construction. In terms of change in the mix of use, the residential component is increased marginally by 9 additional units. Office, the original proposal had 120,000 square feet of office space. That has been removed. And the retail has also been reduced by about 99,500 square feet. Just to note, the existing marketplace has about 121,000 square feet of office space already. And in addition to that, it also has about nearly 95,000 square feet of retail space that is existing. So in terms of mix of uses, there is an office component to the marketplace. So this is the approved 2008 marketplace during its phase 1. This building, 64th and Christie, or Essex building, or Emmy building. This is under construction right now, about to be completed in about a few weeks. And in that phase, they also envisaged the building, which was a residential with commercial at the bottom, and which accommodated the pedestrian connection to Shell Mound. In the phase 2 of the approved marketplace, you have the garage building, you have the realignment of the Shell Mound Street, and then you have the removal of the UA theaters and replacement with retail and residential. And in the final phase, you have construction of this street, 63rd, 62nd, and construction of this portion, which included residential and some retail. The proposed build-out today is this. They have sort of relabeled different parcels. So just to acquaint you, this would be the realigned Shell Mound Street. This is parcel A. That includes the pedestrian, the bridge connection. This would be the garage building with bottom ground floor retail. Then you have the parcel C, which would be grocery and residential, and then you have the UAA parcel, which would be residential. And then, of course, you have a small retail kiosk as parcel F. And, of course, the expanded Christie Park. How can one forget that? Okay, so in the proposed phase 1, what they are proposing is the realignment of Shell Mound Street and construction of parcel C. Parcel C contains about 35,500 square feet of retail, of which about 30,000 would be a grocery store at this point. And there would be 75 units which would wrap around this retail space. As compared to the approved PUD, PDP, this portion has a few less units, 75 versus 86. There is more retail. The retail that was envisaged on this site was 5,000. That is being now changed to a larger retail of 35,000. This is a shorter building. This is a 50-foot building, and what they were envisaging was 85. And this is a larger parcel, as you can see, and this is due to the relocation of 63rd Street to the north and Market Drive to the west, both of which result from a smaller footprint of the 64th and Christie building, which was approved by the council in 2010. In phase 2, we'll see the Christie Park expansion. And compared this with the approved PUD PDP, it is about the same, except it's not a strict rectilinear park as was shown in the PUD PDP plan, but it will kind of taper towards the north end, and the commission is quite familiar with the design of the park. And the park has been designed, as you know, to provide for future expansion on the city-owned parcels to the south. So in the phase 3, and that's the final phase where the project would be built out, and that would see parcel A, parcel B, and parcel F. So in parcel A, which is this building right here, it will contain 185 units, about 15,000 square feet of ground floor retail. In terms of height, and this doesn't quite show it that well, and you will see graphics later on that will show that, the northern end of this building would be 79 feet, and the southern end would be 50 feet. When compared that with the approved PUD, it is less units, 185 versus 206. There is more retail on the ground floor. The grand staircase that was envisioned that would be connecting down to Shell Mound has been brought back, and you will see more graphics of that. The northern height is reduced from 279 feet, and originally I think it was about 175 feet. And the southern portion of the building is same as what was in PUD, which is 50 feet. Phase 3, parcel B, which is this portion right here, this is seen to be a ground floor retail, and it would be a 4-level parking garage, and the height would be 45 feet. When compared with the approved PUD PDP, there's less retail. There is no office. It's about the same amount of parking, and because there is no office, the height is considerably reduced to 45 feet instead of the 120 feet, which would have accommodated both the parking as well as the office use. Parcel D, that is the UA Theater site. What was approved was for 234 units and a height of 79 feet. Compared to the approved plan, there are slightly more units. The height is reduced to 79 feet as compared to 150 feet. No commercial space is proposed on this site. And the parcel is slightly smaller, again, due to the relocation of 63rd Street, which results from a smaller footprint of the 64th and Christie building. And then you have the small parcel F, which is a kiosk, which they also propose as was approved in the PUD plan. In addition to that, there are certain other streetscape improvements. A new 63rd Street, just right here, between Christie and Shell Mound, is considered now a residential street with units both on the north side of parcel D and of course the existing building under construction. And then also on the south side, you will have residential in front of the grocery store, and then followed by the park. Market Drive, which is here, will be constructed between the park and parcel C, and will connect 63rd Street and Shell Mound Street via the plaza area, which we may call 62nd Street as well. There was some additional information that was requested by the Commission in October. This was regarding how the transit and the pedestrian and the bicycle movement would take place on the entire site. You also wanted information on the general circulation and loading for different parcels, and these two will be covered by the applicant in more detail. In addition to that, you wanted information on the city-owned Christie Avenue properties in terms of what would be proposed there, and a study session will be followed after this one. So you will have an opportunity to hear from staff as well as provide comments. So in terms of conformity to the general plan as well as consistency with the approved 2008 PUD PDP, in order to approve any FDP, in this proposal, the Commission must make the finding that the proposed FDP substantially conforms to the PDP. We believe that this finding can be made as changes result in development that is smaller in height and in flow area ratio. And the intent of the original approval was to replace all the surface parking lots and create a mixed-use development over 25 years. What is being proposed is a slightly smaller project that does replace all the existing surface parking lots with a marginally greater residential units, 9 more units than what was approved, less retail, no new office, and within a much smaller time frame. So the issues to be considered by the Commission is the fundamental one, which is the conformance with the approved PUD-PDP. We request that you give us direction that if this proposal goes forward, you would be able to make this finding for each FDP that comes along your way. And of course, we request any suggestion regarding design of the overall proposed design. So that concludes my presentation. In addition, we just do, it's as an FYI, we have hired Fair and Peers to conduct a traffic report for the entire project, looking at it generally, and as well looking at the individual parcel circulation. They will also peer review Kimley Horn's traffic study, which was submitted by the applicant, to ensure that the change in the configuration of the Shellmount Street and the proposed parking and circulation do not create additional impacts that need to be further mitigated. Also, we will be doing a photo simulation studies of each of the parcel, so you have an idea of how the project looks in 3D, so to speak. So now I do conclude my presentation, and if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me. And we should also hear from the applicant, who will give you more details regarding the transit and pedestrian bicycle circulation, as well as more details of how the project is going to look like. But I will take any questions at this time if you have any.
Any questions for staff? Thanks, Baru.
You just want to take off from the...
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mark Steffen, President of City Center Realty Partners. We're pleased to be in front of you once again. As you all know, we've been working with the Commission and the staff for nearly a year on this project, most recently in October in front of you to talk about the park. And as Maru mentioned, at that time there was a desire by the Commission to not just consider the park as a unit, but to look at the whole project as a whole. And there was also some concerns, questions about connectivity and about how the transit would work. We feel that was all a very good suggestion. We heard your concerns both that night and at opportunities we've had to talk further about it. We've worked really hard to address your concerns, and we'll present those through the course of the next several minutes, and we're hopeful that you'll feel that we've made a strong effort to address those concerns. So right now I'd like to ask our architect, Aaron Ashley, to come up and talk to you a little bit about how we feel this is in conformance with the approved PDP, and talk about how we've addressed some of these concerns.
Thanks. It's nice to see you again. In addition to Mark and I, we brought a little more horsepower into the team after seeing you in October, which is Nelson Nygaard. And Jeff Tumlin's here also to speak to transit, traffic, loading issues with a little bit more authority than I can. So we'll look to him on a couple points. You know, we have seen you a lot, and I think some of the confusion that's come out of the process is things happen in different orders. And so We saw you actually a year ago tonight for a study session on the road and the parking garage parcel B in the grocery store. And, you know, the grocery store went away, as many of you know, and then we got sidetracked, and meanwhile, Avalon Bay entered the mix as residential partners, and so you saw a study session from them early last summer, and we were working on the park to try to get that moving, so you saw a study session on that. And so you were quite right to get us back in front of you, focused on the master plan. And so what we'd like to talk today about is the master plan. So if you slice the site just above ground level and think about how the ground floor really functions, and then if you step back and squint at the massing and how does this thing feel? And then what we'd like to do, and we're currently calendared to do so, is come back to you in January at your study session with the detail, the vertical detail, the architecture of each of the parcels. So it'd kind of be a super night of marketplace. But the hope is still to get into the ground as soon as possible, relocating Shell Mound and to build a grocery store. There's a grocery store that's been very interested, and they have a timeline that's very quick, and we think they'd be a terrific addition to Emeryville. And so it's just a matter of keeping them warm long enough. Just to kind of step back a little bit, and I don't want to belabor this because we've given you a big package to chew on, and you've seen big packages from us over the last year. But kind of thinking of the Bayfront neighborhood and how the site really fits into that. And we all know this, and sometimes I drove through again last week, and just to remind myself of all the things going on and all the various employers and the importance of 65th Street and the employers along 65th and the employers down Christie and the great residential that already exists, really the hundreds of residential uses that already exist. And then thinking about the connectivity and all those challenges of getting across the railroad tracks and really moving within and around the public market site. It's really a super block of parking lots. And what we're talking about in red here is really enhancing the connectivity. And if you think about the marketplace as a real market hall, and that anyone can walk through it, and you think about the additional measures we're making, whether it's 63rd or 62nd or the Grand Stair, all of this increases connectivity throughout the neighborhood. And so the kind of the big things and the way we've zoned the program, and frankly the way some of the way that PDP anticipated was get retail to a critical mass so the retail is really strong. That's retail, food and beverage, and make it a length that's really meaningful. So around 1,100 feet is a strong length for retail. Reinforce connections, especially with Amtrak and across the tracks every time we can. Expand residential. There's a great little residential neighborhood. Let's expand that and give it a new heart, which is this park. And so these are kind of the key components of the project. And so what Mark said the first time we were in front of you, and I think what we still really stand by, is that this marketplace and the realigned Shell Mound as a main street could really be the heart of Emeryville, at least this neighborhood of Emeryville. And there's significant investment in public space to make it the case. So the site today, as a reminder, with Essex nearly complete with their project, significant amount of surface parking, upwards of 1,000 spaces. The UA Theater that had always required more than 800 parking spaces. A roof plan of the proposal we've got in front of you, and I think some of you have seen our little model, but it might help kind of put it all into 3D. But effectively to the south is the residential parcel A with ground floor retail. Parcel B, which is really the parking reservoir for the project with ground floor retail. Parcel C, which is a grocery store wrapped by residential. There's enough structured parking here above the grocery store to supplement the office, but to help our phasing work. And Parcel D is a residential building. And all of those are linked together to the park with a real significant public circulation system. What's kind of critical to the life of the place is really the ground floor. And since we've seen you last and since we've really kind of dug in last, there's a couple of key changes. So the big thing and the big change from today is the connectivity of the retail environment. So this is, just over 1,000 feet from the south end of the site to the grocery store. It really creates, there's ways to loop through it. There's ways to find different ways. There's kind of that sense of discovery. All of that's connected with a meaningful circulation system that's primarily pedestrian across and through the park, so linking folks from one side of Christie into and through the project. You know, again, this is like a European market hall, so most of the day this is public circulation. You know, there was comments from this commission last year that the garage needed to have more articulation, and so you see that in what we're showing today. A big topic of conversation on Parcel A in early October was resurrecting the grand stair concept and how that links into a meaningful transit hub, and so that's something we'll talk about today. And lastly was kind of a challenge to define in better terms what these other streets are. So of course, I think Charlie pointed out the last time that this street, 63rd, this street here, what we're calling Market Drive, and this street, 62nd, are all in the general plan as public, you know, public easements over private roads, basically, but it's basically streets. And that this, between Parcel D and Essex, and that this behind the market, were effectively parking lots. But one of the suggestions that our last, in some conversations, was that this should feel more like a street, so we've made that change. But the biggest change, I think, since you've last seen this, is that 63rd is really this great residential street. So Essex is about to finish a handful of townhouses. We've got this great park and the dog park at the north end. We're showing this residential wrapper of townhouses looking over the park and looking against townhouses. And Avalon has pulled their lobby and their real public faces, bike rooms and other things, to Shellmount. And so the Shellmount is really this great civic street, and it's really connected to the rest of the retail environment because we've pulled this building back. We'll talk about that in a little more detail. Just to kind of walk you through and put some visuals. So again, we're going to speak more in depth about the buildings and their articulation and their architecture and the specific landscape proposals for each of them in January. But as you start at the south end of the project, we've got a handful of renderings, but effectively you're entering a totally different district. And this is the current alignment of Shellmount, and Shellmount about right here keeps going, and so we're proposing that it change directions. Parcel A is a residential building, and this is retail on the ground floor. This is a little retail building, about a 3,500 square foot retail. We're making a point to preserve all these great trees and that lawn that's there. And at the base of this grand stair, we're trying to accommodate transit in a really meaningful way. So we've co-located very generous bus stops. We've looked at a cycle track approach to how transit would be handled, and I'll let Jeff talk a little bit more about that. And we've made a provision for a future bike share. So what does this look like? If you're standing in front of the Hyatt at Shellmount Way intersection, you get a sense of the Parcel F restaurant. There's Urban Outfitters in the background. If you stand in the Hyatt's parking lot, or pull out of their porte cochere, you see the new cafe at the south corner of Parcel A, and a residential building is a placeholder of what that would look like above. Improvements to the marketplace. And I just kind of want to invite Jeff up here to talk a little bit more specifically on a couple of slides here about how we envision the transit solution.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeffrey Tumlin. I'm a transportation planner and owner at Nelson Nygaard. We're a transportation planning firm that got its start, actually, in transit system planning. So we were brought onto this project to help really integrate both transit as well as walking and biking into this project, while at the same time accommodating the needs of automobiles. And so we had some specific recommendations for changes. One of those changes was to acknowledge, as will be shown later, this grand staircase here that connects directly to the pedestrian overpass over the railroad tracks, to the Emeryville Amtrak station, and to all the buses and other services that are available just on the other side of the tracks. Consulting the EBOT study and the AC Transit comprehensive operations analysis, we realized that most of the buses and potential future streetcars in this corridor are running north-south, and they're going through. To a certain degree, there are some buses that are turning around, but those buses are wanting to turn around further to the north, either at 64th Street or probably even better yet, 65th, given the amount of density that exists further to the north. So we recognize that the real opportunity for creating the primary transit hub for this part of Emeryville was actually right at the bottom of this grand stair, on Shellmount itself, connecting directly to the Amtrak station, but also then tied in with a multimodal transit hub that could be fitted into the garage for car share spaces, for bike repair, for bike share, and for other programs to help people who live, who work, who are shopping here find ways of getting around other than in a private automobile. Now, at the same time, we wanted to create a bus hub in both directions. So you'll see a main bus bulb out right there in the northbound direction, and another one over here in the southbound direction. We're expecting a fair amount of transit service here. We also want to make sure that Shell Mound actually becomes a better bike street as well. So the other thing that you see in green are the improved bike facilities. And you can see that they're actually being routed backside of the bus bulb out. So the buses would stop in the traffic lane at the bulb out. They'd, board their passengers, take off, 7-9 seconds delay or so. Bikes that were coming up behind the bus, rather than waiting for the bus to continue or trying to merge around the outside of the buses, could instead continue along the right-hand side of the buses while waiting bus passengers are on this island here, 6 to 8 foot platform. Those then continue, they transition into being standard, either standard bike lanes or buffered bike lanes, the rest of the Shell Mound corridor. So we recognize that there are some trade-offs inherent in this configuration for transit. Having buses stop in the traffic lane will mean a few seconds of additional delay for motor vehicles that will have to wait for the bus to continue before the motor vehicles move through. This will result in a few additional seconds of motor vehicle delay, but we believe that it will result in a significant improvement in person delay. Because currently, if we're looking at automobile level of service, your current standards assume that a bus is equal to a car, or a person on board a 40-passenger bus is valued at 1/40th the value of a person driving alone in a car. By allowing the buses to stop in traffic and offload their passengers, you significantly reduce bus delay, and you also improve safety by not forcing those buses to merge back into traffic. So that is a fairly strong recommendation that we have, and at the same time, in order to ensure that cyclists are provided with an advantage, that they be allowed this bypass lane outside of the bus bulb out. Below you see some pictures of similar facilities. Those photos are all from Portland, Oregon. These are the same as what San Francisco is currently planning for Market Street improvements. And of course, there's an image of a bike share station up in the upper right.
And then just to put that into context, so since you've seen us, we've lowered the massing of the southern half of the building to be consistent with the PDP at 50 feet. The northern half is significantly lower than the 14-story building that's proposed. There's a series of versions of this, and so this is today's version, but in January, we'd like to come back to you. Regardless of the actual articulation, it's a generous, I want to say this is on the order of 10 to 15, 18 feet wide at least. There's an elevator. There's a really significant corridor. You can see the existing bridge here coming across in a public area down a sidewalk.
So are you now thinking that's open to the top? Because on these, it's showing the parking lot all the way across.
That's a drawing error. This is open to the top, okay. Yeah. Sorry, so yeah, this is the podium. And there's parking below the podium on both sides, sorry. And then it lands at the northbound bus stop. We're trying to find the right amount of space on the west half of the street, so we've moved the mid-block crosswalk to actually mid-block of the building, or the block, and then the southbound bus stop is here at the stoplight. Continuing up, Shell Mound. So again, this becomes the realignment of Shell Mound on this view here. Pete's Coffee today is here. The office tower is here. This is the same garage that we looked at a year ago with you all, with updates that have been made. It kind of worked through the details. We've mentioned before the renovation of the marketplace that's underway. Another view. as you come outside of the marketplace, so if you're standing literally in front of Pete's Coffee and look across the street, this would be the view to the garage and the stair elevator up into the garage with a cafe on that southern corner. If you were in a drone looking down on Pete's and the pizza place, you would see this realigned shell mount, so there's still cafe seating in front of the restaurants. There's a loading zone for the marketplace, 6-foot Class 2 bike lane, 11-foot travel ways in each direction, another bike lane, and a really generous sidewalk. So, you know, at the piers, so at the least wide part of the sidewalk, it's 10 feet. At the storefront, it's 12 feet. And at the bulb outs, which are significant, it's 18 feet. So it's you know, it's on the order of a very public sidewalk. And then again, there's a small plaza at the entrance to the garage. It's more like 38 feet. We took a lot of cues from the shell mount design guidelines throughout the project, but just to kind of highlight one area is how we've handled parking. So this is the guidelines on the left-hand side, which envision bulb outs, tree and LID bulb outs and parking between them. So that's what we're showing. The number of on-street parking spots has been significantly reduced since we've seen you before, because as we work through biofiltration and other things with the Public Works folks, this is kind of where we've ended up. But we think the promise of a handful of on-street parking spaces is really meaningful for the retail to be viable. So the idea of kind of what it would look like driving up Shell Mound, just as you make the turn, so that's the parking garage there above the retail. This is at the very north end of the parking garage, another cafe. So we've tried to anchor the corners of the buildings with cafes, and you kind of get a feel for the width and height of the retail. And then at the north end of Shell Mound, as it banks again, where we're looking at the grocery store, really anchoring the view as you come north, and really terminating the retail, but certainly not terminating the importance of Shell Mound, because we continue that commitment to sidewalks and streetscape. But what that does create is this great residential street, 63rd, and you can see the townhouses here on these two facades of Parcel D. With the public rooms, this would be the lobby and leasing offices here, really taking that kind of prominent position on Shell Mound. And then a series of townhouses on Parcel C. Effectively, this is sort of an L-shaped building hugging a grocery store building. So it's kind of two buildings in one with a shared parking deck above the grocery store. And the idea, this is early, but just to kind of give you a sense of scale, this is the grocery building. And again, the grocery would occupy the bottom floors, and there'd be parking above with a circulation spine. If you're walking out of the marketplace into the alley and you see the upfixed existing fitness building and where the billiards hall used to be, and then the anticipated future state of the marketplace tower, and then this building would terminate the end with shop fronts. We're looking at kind of a restaurant component of the grocery store being there. And then this great residential street. So this is if you're standing on 63rd Street, and I'm standing on the sidewalk of Parcel D, and I'm looking at this new residential wrapper around the back side of the grocery store with the park in the distance, and you can see PPP in the distance. So really, again, kind of that great residential address for a townhouse with flats above. A big question is, how do you load a grocery store? So we've looked at how to load a grocery store from every side, and really where we've come to is that we believe we can manage the grocery store arrivals at the right time of day, and that because it's a lease and it's not kind of what happens at Berkeley Bowl or other places that we know around town, we think we can really maintain that, and certainly the landlord does. And that, again, sort of what's the easiest, most benign thing for the residents of the neighborhood today and the future residents, and it's to use Shell Mound and not have the beep, beep, beep of trucks in great little residential streets. And so being able to come south on Shell Mound from the Ashby exit, back in, again, at very limited times a day, into a gated, covered delivery and trash area, and then to pull out and leave. And we think we've provided, ample space. It's more than 2 truck bays to accommodate all of that. It's 27 feet in height. And so we've been able to contain this in a way that we think is fine without really curtailing any of that connectivity, because we still have these 15-foot sidewalks with landscaping buffering that side of the building. And we've been able to sort of relate this service function to the rail tracks and not impoverish any of the other elevations.
I just want to add quickly that the key component here is controlling when the deliveries are made. We have experience with other projects where we do just that and limit the deliveries so as not to impact the rest of the community, and we want to do that here. And I think that Avalon Bay has also had that experience on their project in San Francisco, so it can be done to a very acceptable manner for everybody in the community.
And the last piece is the park, which you know, we'd like to come back to you for a final hearing in the new year. But effectively, having heard your suggestions over the last several months, we've eliminated a couple of the mounds and created a much straighter connection across, and eliminated some planting here to really pull the plaza and pull that great hardscape all the way down and through. And so this is all flush paving, and the cars actually have to go up and over. So we think that's really a strong connection. In terms of phasing, I just want to kind of, it's slightly different than Maru said, but basically it's the same. So the idea is we'd like to get going first on the road relocation, and that really makes a lot of other things possible. And we'd like to be able to do that concurrent to the grocery store, because it really, getting the grocery store in is that thing that really is the catalyst for a lot of the improvements here. But leave the residential wrapper for a couple of years, because we'd like to be able to use the parking, the surplus parking on top of the grocery store to allow us to phase in the rest of the garage over time. So effectively, we just need to create some parking to buy us the time to get the garage in place to get it all to work. We'd then like to get the park going, and really, we want to get the park finished before any of the residential buildings open.
Wait, can you
Yeah.
can you go back and explain? I wasn't real clear on the grocery store again. How the phasing would work with the parking and everything.
So the grocery store sits on a site with about 300 parking spots, and the grocery store itself requires about 100 parking spots. And so what we're proposing is to put about 300 parking spots above the grocery store. And ultimately, some of those would be assigned to the residential building, some of those would be assigned to the grocery store, and some of those would be assigned to the office building that already exists. But what we want to do is use that reservoir of parking to help us phase in the eventual parking garage on parcel B. So we need to create some structured parking to build more structured parking.
I see. So when the wraparound residential was built, that wouldn't have any parking in it. It would rely on the parking that was already on top of the grocery store.
Correct, and all the
Okay.
floors are matched so that you
Okay.
can park and walk right in. It also lets us use some of that gray L there as surface parking for the interim. Again, it's just, as you guys all know, we're chasing our tail on cars for a while until we can get ahead of it.
Erin, just for clarification, you would be bringing the design of both the grocery store and the residential together, correct?
Yes. So we want to show you it all. We want to have it all approved as an FTP. We'd like to build it in 2 phases.
Okay.
So Christie Park, and then finally, we've kind of done this as sort of 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, but effectively to deliver in really short order the balance of the site. So just kind of a view of what this looks like if you're looking to the west, and parcel A on the left, the garage in the middle, parcel C, parcel D, and the Essex building under construction. So it's a height consistent and a little higher than the Essex building is now, but it's really it's still very much a high density urban place. And then you'd really challenged us to come back to you with some clarity on how this compares to the PDP, and so we'd just spend a few minutes and then wrap up and turn it over to you for questions. But effectively, the PDP came out of a very different market, and it envisioned a couple of key things that one thing in particular we can't stomach at the moment, which is a 100,000 foot, effectively big box store on what is now we're calling parcel D. We just don't see the market for that. So what instead we'd like to do is come up with a mix of smaller footprint, non-chain types of users, and again, catalyze that, have a catalytic user like a grocery store, but obviously much smaller than that 100,000 foot user. The other thing is just finding that the office market isn't there today, and even the existing tower is a little challenged to be effectively leased. So we think all the things we're doing are going to make that office tower a really great address. But at the moment, it's office is a little challenged in Emeryville. In terms of the big changes from the PDP to now, the first was the City Council's approval of a shorter Essex building, which really kind of threw everything into a loop. So that shifted 63rd Street north. It made parcel D smaller. Consequently, it made parcel C a bit bigger. It changed the dimensions of the park, we think, to deliver an equivalent area. And then we thought that, again, the market today in Emeryville for office and for high-rise type 1 construction just isn't there. It's off by a market cycle or 2 market cycles. So looking at a way to deliver high-quality walkable urbanism without those 2 components. Put into graphical 3D terms, so the upper image is the approved PDP. Here was that proposed 14-story tower. Here was a proposed office building. There was also a tower on top and kind of surrounding that 100,000-foot retail user. And then what we're showing below, so yes, parcel C is somewhat larger, but it's really a balance of the math of shrinking these 2 parcels. Again, what we're labeling here number 2 and what we have down here as number 1 are both 50 feet. So the PDP was very explicit. If I go back, written on top of this was a 50-foot building, and that's what Avalon's come back with as their revision on parcel A. Seen from, again, a kind of a drone hovering above the terraces across the railroad tracks. So the approved PDP on the top and what we're proposing below. Again, we've broken up the massing from behind, and we've significantly reduced the height of a couple of these pieces. What does that mean for you and me walking down the street? I think that the above approved PDP was going to cast some pretty significant shadows and be a very built place. And this lower version of what we're proposing today, really, understanding that we've got a very generous retail floor of upwards of 15, 18, 22 feet, really makes for a very walkable, comfortable Shellman. I brought a lot of other things which you've already chewed on, so I don't want to kind of belabor that, but we can refer to them if you have questions, and we have some other alternatives too if there's other questions, but I just kind of want to leave it at that. Thanks. And then a couple of you seen this, but we have a little 3D model of what we're proposing here.
All right, are there any questions for the applicant?
The original project got the initial stages of a LEED Platinum for neighborhood, didn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Are you pursuing that?
How do we say?
Yeah, we're in stages, yes. We're going to pursue that. I mean, right now we're working on the master plan, but that's part of our concept is to continue to be able to maintain that LEED designation.
I had a question, and just for the record, I have an older set of plans in my packet. They're dated November 10th, so I don't know if anyone else has November 10th drawings, but looking around, looks like December 2nd is the correct set?
Yeah.
Okay. I have November 10th drawings. So if I ask a question that doesn't make sense, that might be the reason why I have an outdated set of plans. So the question I have is about the transit kiosk. You talked a lot about the locating that transit hub where you have the bus stop and you have all those great things going on there. But in my plans, the transit kiosk is shown on parcel B, I believe. Or actually it's on, let me make sure. Yeah, it's shown on parcel B, and so I was wondering if what went into the decision to locate that there, and would it make sense to move it to parcel A where you have the transit hub?
Yeah, I think we've been trying to respond to different opinions. We had the opportunity to meet with a handful of the commissioners, and we had the opportunity to meet with staff a number of times, and and then obviously with some folks like Jeff who have a lot of great opinions. And so co-locating with the Amtrak. And again, I think the plans you saw were more related to when the stairs landed at the north end of parcel A.
Okay.
And so as the grand stair kind of came back to the middle, we brought the energy of the transit hub back to the middle.
Okay, but is the transit kiosk also located where the grand staircase, or is it proposed to be located there?
Yes.
Okay.
Although there are still a number of transit provisions that were foreseen in the parking garage on parcel B, like car share,
Right.
prioritize carpool parking, and other things that are sort of better kept in the garage. But things like bike share, when it comes to Emeryville, we envision being right here next to the transit hub.
Okay. Thanks. It's the only question I had.
I have a question for Jeff. Could the whole length of the bike lane be buffered? Could the parked cars, is there any reason the parked cars couldn't be moved to outboard of the bike lane to buffer it from the traffic?
Well, yes and no. So we could have separated parking protected cycle tracks. What it requires, though, is an additional 3-foot buffer between the parked car and the bike facility. So it would add about 6 feet to the overall width of the street, which would either mean pushing the buildings farther apart or narrowing the sidewalk. So what we attempted to do here was to kind of split the difference by having the cycle track go behind only the bus bulbs, so that you don't need the additional space for the right side car door opening, which is what is necessary behind a parked car.
How is the door zone any different than this situation? I mean, in this situation, you have the passenger door opening under the bike lane rather than the driver door, is that?
Correct, yeah. We wanted to stay within keeping of the National Association of City Transportation Officials Urban Street Design Guide, which both for cyclist safety, but also for disabled passenger loading and for stuff loading, likes to keep there to be a zone between the bike facility and the car of about 3 feet.
Okay.
It also then provides a little bit more flexibility in case there's debris in the bike lane, that the cyclist can maneuver around into that sort of pedestrian buffer zone.
That's true, yeah.
Yep.
I want to point out one thing, too. Two things. One, also cognizant of that, that's why we have a 6-foot wide bike lane, so it provides some maneuverability around the cars. We also looked at the possibility of widening the street. Part of the problem is, as you get to where the parking garage B is, we've got about 120 feet of depth, and that lays out perfectly for 2 parking rows. If we move widen the street and narrow that construction, we can't get 2 rows, so the height of that parcel B gets almost double in height, and it makes it a very much different street. More shadows and such. So that's why we chose to go the route that we did.
Any other questions? Thank you. So I think what I would like to do, I will open the public comment. And then for our comments, I think what I would like to do is we can all give our comments, and then at the end, I'll invite the applicant back up. They've asked if they could come up at the end and just make sure that they understand all of our comments and ask any questions and respond to anything. So I think we'll do that. So, yes.
Chair Moss, when you make your comments, each commissioner would just go through all of their comments, right? Not issue by issue.
Right. So we'll just go down the row and just try to hit everything, and then we'll try to make sure we have some sort of consensus at the end. So we'll go ahead and open the public comment. If there is anyone who would like to speak on this item, please come forward.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm a resident of the Terraces, and I also have a little show and tell. So, this is the...
You need to use a microphone. You can use the portable.
It's on the table.
One too.
Yeah, and you can also use the overhead. Okay.
So what I have in front of you is 2008, which the Terraces supports, and you can remove this one, which is what we would like to see, and a proposed 2014 and their new design. And you can see the difference between what's going on. And I also have a...
Can you hold the mic up, please?
Yes, I also have a demonstration right now. So the residents of the terraces appreciate development and knows it's coming to Emeryville. We welcome the future of the new development. However, the terraces are looking for a balanced and would be glad to schedule and host the developers to come and meet with us to come up with a win-win solution. But we would like to say that before the final decision is made, that we make a request for independent CEQA requiring view shed, noise cancelling, and traffic. I need to get back to my little, can somebody close that off for me? I think so. Is that the Emeryville? How do I go forward and backwards? Just okay. Use that. Okay. So this is also some of our views, visual affecting or building, and just what we see from the bridge of Emeryville, and considering what's going in and what was proposed in 2008. And it's quite self-explanatory. So you just can take a look at it with a 3D rendering of the buildings. Today, this is what we have. You can look at what was approved in 2008 and what we have today. You see the terraces with the view of the Emeryville Marina and the Golden Gate Bridge. The draft of 2004 versus today. Block views from the wind tunnel. Approval, 28. The preserved view. With the new building designed for 2014, that is gone. And you can see it in real time, real life.
Okay.
And that's it. So we'd really like you to consider what that new building is going to do to the terraces, and not only that, the overall vision for Emeryville. Thank you.
If you could sign in, thanks.
Hi, good evening. My name is Parisa Paimani. I have been practicing chiropractic in the city of Emeryville since June 2000, and I'm also a resident at the terraces since February of 2003 to the present time. I would really like to stay here and continue working in the city of Emeryville, as well as to live here. And I'm at the terrace at the southwest corner, which is just about an unobstructed view of the city and the Berkeley Marina. And the proposed project at the Lot A would tremendously affect my view, the value of my property, and I came to this table just a few months ago and really encouraged the developer to pay attention to our needs and our meet, and make every arrangement possible, like the original developer did, to build a building that is kind of like juxtaposed to us at a much lower level, so it doesn't obstruct our view, and the residential area can be a little bit higher. But as Lori pointed out, the original proposal is had done the shadow study, and actually the architect came to my unit personally and made a lot of effort to please a lot of us. And I would really like to see the same thing again, rather than keep coming over here and just seeing the same monstrosity on the same lot. Just kind of like work with us and try to build something that doesn't damage the investment we made to the Emeryville and the view, because just like them, we would like to enjoy the area as well. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners and Chair Moss. Stephen Keller, Pacific Park Plaza. First, I want to thank City Center for putting together this comprehensive review of the public market, the PUD and the PDP. This helps us all see the overall vision of the project and how it is considerably smaller in scale, lower in impacts of the neighborhood, and sooner to come to fruition than the 2008 PUD. I'm very grateful for the detailed transit demand management plan. And with the plan, there are too many components to discuss in my limited time, so here are just a few of my comments on the TDM's strengths and weaknesses. On the downside, I feel it's heavily dependent on carpool and vanpool, and I don't know how many travelers actually use this mode compared with others. I particularly don't like this idea that the buses stop in the travel lane on Shell Mound to board and offboard the passengers, but I guess we're looking at these as traffic calming devices to discourage drive-through traffic on their way to I-80. But on the upside, I do like the new cycle tracks sections that avoid bus conflicts, as those are serious conflicts for bikers. I like that there are specific parking locations for employees, though I don't know how that's going to be enforced. I love the position of the transportation corridor as a transportation coordinator as a job position. I've always thought this would be helpful to have a knowledgeable transit person available to answer questions. The question is will they work on weekends? And I do like the idea of them providing information packets. I thank you for providing the space for the bike share in Emeryville, because hopefully it is going to be coming. And a couple suggestions I have are make all signage related to biking the standard issue green and white colored signage. Don't use blue and white, as BART has begun to do, and now you're confusing handicapped issues with biking issues. Something not related to the TDM is a big thank you for preserving the view sheds for the terraces. I don't understand how a 50-foot structure in the original plan and a 50-foot structure in this plan is in conflict, and so I'm kind of confused with what the residents were saying. But last and not least, I want to thank the city staff for their tables in the staff report. They made this comparing the PUD or the 2008 PUD to this one fast and easy. So thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment. But before we discuss, I do want to invite the applicant up again real briefly to respond to something or to ask a question. So it's my understanding, based on your presentation, that the proposed revised parcel A is in some places the same height and in some places shorter than the approved PUD. Is that correct?
Yeah, it almost to the exact footprint. Yeah. So the I'll just get you to a page so you see in the PDP. So our understanding is that this 50-foot H set the height limit for if you take the direct line south of the Amtrak bridge. So, and then 175 feet north. And so, again, that same line, this piece is 50 feet. This piece is, I forget, 85 feet, 79 feet, something like that.
And what was shown in the PUD was much higher than that, right?
175, yeah. So yes, this now represents the massing from the PDP.
Erin, it may be useful if you clarify that the study session that we had on parcel A a few months ago showed something different, and I think that's what the residents are responding to, that you have actually changed that, so you may want to clarify that.
Yeah, I was sort of figuring that her model, that's actually a really good reflection of what we had in the October 2nd study session, is now, we've listened and we've gone a different way, and I'm pretty sure as part of the application for parcel A, that team is going to meet with the terraces folks as well. So that's forthcoming.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, wait, while you're up there, I hear what you're saying, and I just want to. It was something I noticed when I was looking through your packet on some of these massing renderings of like G040, G041. They all do appear to show the southern portion of parcel A smaller than the proposed new.
We noticed that.
And I just was wondering why.
We screwed up. Sorry. So in CAD, this is 50 feet and this is 50 feet, but when we took a 2008 drawing and we put it up in SketchUp, we made this one marginally taller.
Okay.
On accident. You know, as
They're
measured,
both
it's the
50
same.
feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to check.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, then with that, we'll take this back for comments. Commissioner Gunkel, do you want to get us started?
Sure. So yeah, overall, I feel like it's a lot of improvements over what we've seen, and I really thank you guys for putting the extra effort into engaging all of us on this sort of more general level before we get into the individual buildings. So I only really have a couple comments. One is I like the transit center at the base of the grand stair, but at the same time, it seems odd to have the pedestrian walk then offset significantly from the grand stair. It seems like there should be a pedestrian crosswalk at the base of the grand stair over to the plaza in front of the existing public market, and I don't know how to make that work with the bus stops, etc., but I'm sure there's a way. And the only other, I know we've talked before about parcel D. I really like the fact that we've now, you know, how we've shifted it, how you've gotten the lobby located at a sort of, you know, really making Shell Mound more of a corridor with that sort of more visual connection over to the lobby area of parcel D. And I like the townhouses along 63rd. I think when we were talking about that, parking lane, what you're labeling between the Essex building and parcel D previously as sort of, you know, trying to connect through, I mean, at that time the conversation was about connecting that through to the existing parking lane behind the public market. And now that we're not, I mean, you're not really proposing to do that. And I like the townhouses wrapping around the grocery store, and I like the retail at the corner of the grocery store engaging the park. But I guess what I'm getting at is that parking lane, you've now got between parcel D and the Essex building, you've now got townhouses facing a parking lane that has a garage on the opposite side of it. And so starting to wonder, does it make more sense to pull the townhouses over to 64th Street, and if you need an opening to the garage, put that in that parking lane area? And, you know, I guess other than that, it's really just I guess I have some concerns about the phasing. You know, I guess my biggest worry would be that the grocery store goes in and then nothing else goes in for quite a while, and basically we're left with the public market with a grocery store at the end of it, and a park that isn't getting the infusion of all the people moving into the area that all these residential portions could residential components can provide. And so I want to make sure that, you know, I understand the need for the phasing. It's just be nice to know what the timelines or estimated timelines are for the phasing and how long we have to wait between phases. But other than that, yeah, those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay, so overall, I'd like to thank the staff for preparing the report. It's very comprehensive. I think you've done a great job of making a side-by-side comparison in this report between the 2008 and the 2014 plans much more easy to follow. I also would like to thank the applicant for being open to revisiting this plan as a whole, and to Commissioner Gunkel for bringing that up initially, and the rest of the commissioners for supporting him in that. I think as a result, we have a much better plan ahead and a much better project, and just want to recognize the applicant for being open to that, because I realize that that takes considerable time and resources to do that. As far as my comments, I mentioned the transit kiosk, parcel A. Parcel C
issue would be the relocation of potentially relocating that access easement. We would have to work with the ownership of the property, of the public market property, in order to do that, and it would shift the development maximums among the various parcels if we shifted around their size. Our next steps are to compile comments from the Planning Commission on the potential development opportunities, make a presentation to the Council in February. We would develop the draft request for proposals mid-next year, probably at the earliest. As I mentioned, the properties are occupied by our Public Works Department. They will probably be occupied by them for a minimum of 12 months, as the remediation process is fairly lengthy in terms of the approval and then the actual implementation of that remediation. And based upon ultimately direction from the council, the city will issue one or more requests for proposals. Again, and that's based on whether or not we want to go with a single developer for all the sites, or a development or individual RFPs to break that up. So the direction that I'm seeking tonight is these couple elements, which is the extent to which Christie Avenue Park should be expanded, any design considerations to ensure compatibility with the existing and future development in the area. Should we include the affordable housing on these properties or relocate it to another city-owned parcel? Should we do a single mixed-use project with affordable housing spread throughout the site? Or should the affordable housing be a separate, singular project? If you did have a single developer, you could, of course, have an affordable, the main developer could have an affordable housing partner, but really it's the idea of, is the affordable housing integrated into a mixed income property, or is it a singular project? Are there any appropriate non-residential uses? And given the great development potential with the existing zoning, how large a project actually should be developed? And are there any circulation, transportation, or parking issues? With that, I'm open for questions or ready for comments, either way.
So is the alley that runs along the back of the marketplace, is that a public street or is that private property?
No, that's private. Oops, that's private property as well.
So that would have to be negotiated.
So there's no access to the properties from that?
Not at this time. They would have to be negotiated. I believe there's a fence that actually runs.
But 59th Street is private too?
Yes, yes.
But the easement exists?
Yes, yes. And, you know, as you can see, there's no sidewalk, curb and gutter there now, so I presume when we have it redeveloped, if the easement was there or even if it was relocated, we would improve it such that it would appear to be a city street.
If this were developed as a condominium, could you use those affordable units as part of the condominium?
Yes, there are affordable below market rate units.
And that would qualify?
Yes.
And, okay. Because we were trying to get condominiums here, and the problem with condominiums is you have to have 20% of the units affordable. But if we plugged in the ones we have to have, would that handle that part of it?
Yes.
When the 5890 and 5900 Christie properties were purchased with general fund money, what was sort of the thinking or rationale at that time? I mean, it's just a lot of money to obligate without, you know, a sort of a plan for it.
Well, the purchase of those properties was actually a little convoluted. They were actually originally in negotiations to be purchased by the agency, and the agency did perceive as, we had acquired 6150 Christie already, and so the idea was we were assembling them as a development site in conjunction with 6150 when the agency was still around, and as that occurred, the dissolution started to come down, and we didn't want to lose the development opportunity. And so rather than losing the opportunity to acquire the properties, the city went through and completed the transaction using general funds. It was a little more complicated than that, but that's sort of the
That
Cliff's
makes
notes.
so much more sense. That's the piece of information I was missing. Thank you. So it is just about 11:30. Do somebody want to make a motion to extend to, should we go to 11:45?
Enough time?
Is that?
Let's make it enough time.
Sounds like
I'm
a
sort of
motion.
asking you guys, do you think we can do it in 15 minutes?
Yeah, I make a motion that we extend to 11:45
I'll second that.
max.
All right.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Is that without objection?
Yes. All right, so with that, if there's no other questions for Michelle, I think we will open the public comment. Thank you for waiting so long.
My name is John Jackson. I'm a resident at Pacific Park Plaza. I have some comments which I'll make that have been distributed in written form to staff for distribution, along with additional information that has previously been given to City Council over the past few months. At its meeting on October the 7th, 2014, all 5 City Council members, including the 3 remaining incumbents, expressed their support for ultimate expansion of Christie Park southwards into the adjacent city-owned properties. Nora Davis was the first member of the council to speak in strong support. All the others followed with additional comments. Ms. Davis expressed the view that this expansion should occur after the current redesign of Christie Park, but that the Planning Commission should see that the redesign is done in such a way that future integration of additional properties can be done cost effectively. She also added the caveat that all such projects would be contingent upon passage of measures U and V on the November ballot so that funding would be available. These measures were passed by the electorate. And the newly elected council members have also expressed their support for this expansion. At the October 7th meeting, I addressed a question to City Attorney Michael Biddle regarding transferring affordable housing requirement for property immediately adjacent to Christie Park to some other land in the city. This was the first time in a public meeting I've ever heard a final articulation that, in fact, this can be done legally, and the city may use all the land it owns south of the park for expansion of Christie Park if it so chooses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Commission. Again, this is Stephen Keller. I'll hopefully make this very brief. Since you all received this via email, I just wanted to make it a little bit more public comment on it. And the first thing I would like to say is that I believe at this time it's the city's responsibility to intermix our affordable housing, that we no longer put these people in isolated islands of their own, but that we make them an integral part of our community. And so that when we do any development for affordable housing, we intermix that with everyone else in our community. And I support some sort of affordable housing in this neighborhood. The top plan shows a rudimentary idea of an expanded Christie Park. To the north, what the marketplace is going to do. To the south, I showing taking a part of that parcel at the 6100, 6150, and then taking an additional part and wrapping it along the street. Several years ago, former Commissioner John Sherman and I suggested making Christie Avenue more of a green street and bringing more parkland all the way down the street rather than just in encapsulated little areas. This still leaves 2 parcels of good size for development. I believe that we could still go either way with 1 or more developers. In this illustration, I also show that we actually moved the easement. I believe it's an integral part But we move it in to line up with the existing entrance of the public market so that it is visibility from the street and you see right into the public market. And then that makes the other parcel now more large for development. And there you could see a hotel built in that parcel or anything of that size. The street would also allow access for parking, as you could see coming off the street and then going into both parcels there. And then the parcels can somehow come onto the street. And then quickly, I'll just show you a couple ideas that I had for possible buildings on the site. So on the new smaller parcel, you could put something here, which would then face both the Green Street and the new park. You could do something along these lines, of course, pulled back farther from the street, where you could have ground floor workspace and then higher development. And this is a development in Oakland, right along the estuary, showing a green street or access and development along there. So I think we have a good opportunity to look at things a little differently, that we don't just look at continually making square park, square park, square park, but we stretch that out and get more bang for our buck. And that way more of the community gets more greenery. And as I said in the email, all this buildings along that street are right up to the curb. This will give us a chance to pull those buildings off the curb and give us a little bit more breathing space on that street. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so we'll close the public comment, and we'll go to our comments. Buzz, you want to start?
Well, I would certainly agree that we should expand the park onto the 6150 Christie site. As far as the other two goes, we haven't seen any new condominiums in Emeryville because of the affordable housing requirement. But this is a unique situation where we have to put affordable units in, and it wouldn't penalize the development as a whole, and it gets a little more stable group of people living here, and particularly if they're 2 or 3 bedroom units, the park would fit in nicely with a family. So I would encourage something in that direction.
I agree. I think that the park should be expanded. I'm not sure exactly how much. It depends on how you program it, because as the Mr. Jackson's letter said, there's going to be a lot more people living in this area, and there isn't a lot of any extra park space there. So I think that there needs to be a larger park. I would like to see it developed as one integrated piece with the affordable housing mixed in. I think, as Buzz said, it's a good opportunity that we don't have very often to really get ownership housing there, and I think that it could be quite dense. Christie is designated as a green street, I believe, so having more greenery on it is great. What else? Non-residential uses. I think that with it backing up to the marketplace and all that, I think the residential uses would be fine there, especially if it is an opportunity to have ownership housing, because most of what's going up around it is going to be rental housing. So that just to get a better balance of ownership housing in town is a really something I think we should try to do, and that's what I have to say.
Chair Moss, just one point of clarification. The MUR zone for parcels of over 1 acre does require a mix of uses, one of which is supposed to be residential. If the developer can convince the Planning Commission that a mix of uses is not feasible, then a single use can be permitted, which is what you have discussed for the Nady site, as you may recall. But just to remind you that the MUR zone for sites of over 1 acre is supposed to have a mix of uses, according to the zoning.
I agree with both commissioners' comments. I definitely am in favor of having the park expansion, especially given the constraints of the existing site that was abandoned and the structural issues. I just think it's just going to be cost prohibitive for a developer to try to deal with that situation if those if the foundation is not adequate. And as far as Commissioner Cardoza and Commissioner Donaldson were expressing with regard to ownership, I think that this is really a unique opportunity to encourage ownership below market rate units. I think it's really important to have a balance, and home ownership is very life-changing and very transformative. And I think to give that opportunity in terms of affordable housing is really important. So those are my comments.
I do also want to say I think that moving the easement over to line up with the entry to the marketplace is a really good idea, because it's one more east-west pedestrian connection that would be really important.
And I too encourage the Green Street and really looking at developing the park in a different way than we have in the past. I really think that's really refreshing and could really make whatever gets developed there just really tie in very well, instead of having just all these buildings just abut to the street. So I just wanted to support that comment that I heard earlier.
Yeah, and I second pretty much all the comments that I've heard, and Citizen Keller's recommendations as well. I think that we should expand the park some. I don't think that we should take, I think these are valuable sites for housing, especially with the opportunity for condos and affordable housing. And so I don't think that we should be taking up, even the majority of 6150 for park, but using a portion of it. And I like the idea of the Green Street, especially if we really have it as an active Green Street and not sort of just like a landscape berm or buffer. And then I think it's important to have townhouses with porches, or that actually engage the park, utilizing that opportunity, and ideally making those affordable units, because I think most developers would want to make those the market rate units, and I think that'd be really nice. I don't see this as a great site for retail on Christie necessarily. It might be a nice opportunity for a sort of a single anchor type destination. A movie theater was mentioned, or a mini movie theater. I don't know, in the things, I don't know if that's really something that's feasible, but something of that nature, like a little, like a El Cerrito theater, like speakeasy kind of thing, or something like that, that actually, just sort of also gives an identity to the entire thing. And I do think that this could be it might be good to put this out as an entire thing, as a PUD, to open up opportunities just to think about the entire thing as a whole, instead of piecemealing it. I think that the market rate and affordable units should be intermixed throughout the entire development. It would be nice to see the PUD or the RFP maybe require at least 2 architects involved to, if we're worried about the fine-grained design, maybe that's a way to at least get some of the fine-grained design, while at the same time not having, sort of segregated affordable versus market rate housing.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what the other commissioners have said. Yeah, as far as the park expansion, I support the park expansion. As to sort of what extent, I think the diagram that Mr. Keller showed us, I think that is about, I thought that was a good sort of balance of expanding the park and providing land for other development. I think I must have missed the part of the presentation that talked about the tenure of housing, because it seems like people are focusing on the opportunity for ownership housing. I think if it is ownership housing, that's great. I think affordable ownership units are great, but I think in that scenario, it absolutely should be intermixed with market rate units. I think if we were looking at rental units, then management of sort of all of the units becomes more of an issue, and I think it becomes more challenging to intermix them. And in that scenario, I might support separate projects, but if they're ownership, then I think they should definitely be intermixed. I would really like to see not retail, but I really would like to see and as staff said, the zoning requires a mix of uses for sites of this size, and I would really like to see some interesting other uses than residential. So I think it would be really great in the RFP to lead encourage or lead those who are going to submit a proposal to partner with other organizations and entities as part of their proposal, just sort of see who can bring on, the most exciting use and the most exciting tenant right off the bat, because I think that, could be a really interesting opportunity and could really, inform what proposal is selected. So that, I think that's all of my comments. Does anybody have anything else?
Within the time.
Yeah, we did.
Well, just one thought. Obviously, to me, the ideal location to be loading the parking would be from that alley between this and the public market. And so to figure out some kind of an arrangement with the public market team, especially, at this point in time when there's a lot of flexibility and potential leverage in both directions, seems like the thing to do.
Any thoughts on a potential hotel?
I think that's an interesting idea, for one. Especially in conjunction with affordable housing and an expanded park.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we have enough hotels. We need more permanent residents.
So it sounds like mixed feelings.
It's mixed, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can go up to 100 feet, can't we? So we could put luxury hotel on top of the condominiums or something.
Like the Continental.
Or other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So does staff feel they have good direction on this? Is there anything else you need us to opine on?
No,
all right.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got 10 seconds.
All right, well, then we'll move on to commissioner comments. Does anybody have anything? No. All right, great. Then we'll adjourn the meeting.
Wow.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
5 on the dot. 11:45.